Hello, my name is Mr. Chipman. I teach biology and AP biology at Murray High School in Murray, Kentucky, and this is AP Environmental Science 2.5 Natural Disruptions to the Ecosystems. Let's talk about it. So, a natural disruption is exactly what it sounds like, right? So as opposed to like a human anthropogenic sort of disruption. This is something that happens in nature. It's normal, part of the natural flow of things. Forests burn down. They have been burning down long before people. They'll burn down long after people, right? And so this is just a normal occurrence in nature. Obviously, forest fire is a pretty traumatic thing if you're a tree or if you're an animal, right? And so it is, even though it's natural, it's still something that you have to adjust to. So we're going to look at some of those different sorts of things. There are different kinds of natural disruptions. One of them is called periodic natural disruption. A flood is a great example of a periodic disruption, and specifically seasonal flooding. All right, so if you look at the trees here, the area that this is from is going to have some seasons where there's a lot more rainfall, right? And so there's a certain season of the year where flooding is a normal occurrence, right? It is expected, it's seasonal. Right, so that would be an example of periodic. Tidal patterns, right? Tidal patterns are very predictable. They happen pretty much, cyclically, right? With the moon changes. So you get the idea. So these are regular cycles, knowable things. An episodic disturbance happens at irregular intervals. Harder to predict the intervals, but the occurrence itself is a predictable thing. El Nino is a great example of this. Generally predictable, but the duration and the intervals that in which they occur aren't as predictable. But when El Nino happens, it always does a particular thing, right? It's going to bring in warm air from across the Pacific, and it's going to cause changes in our own continent. It's going to cause our warmer winters. You can kind of see the picture here, a normal year versus an El Nino year. This is predictable, but it's when it's going to happen is less so, right? You can sort of see it happening, but when it comes, you know what's going to happen. So we call this episodic. And then lastly, we have random. So random is the things that happen that you don't predict, right? Earthquake. Earthquakes are a great example of this. We don't really have any way to predict earthquakes. We know where they happen. We don't know when they're going to happen. This T-Rex had no idea that his life was going to be changed on this day, and I would be yelling too if this had occurred in the world that I lived in. But this was random, right? Did it change the world? Yeah, catastrophically it changed the entire world. But it's a random occurrence. If you look up dinosaur extinction, you'll see pictures of T-Rexes yelling at meteors. I don't know why artists choose to do that. So let's look at a couple of specific things here, talking about climate disruptions. So climate disruption is when you have a shift in climate. Climate is temperatures and precipitation patterns for long periods of time, average, right? And so when you see climate changes, you see changes in long periods of time that are going to, obviously cause some real change. Climate change is occurring right now, and what's happening? Well, glaciers are melting. Glaciers have melted before, and glaciers will form again, right? Because that is a normal cyclical pattern that our Earth has. But currently they're melting, and it's odd, right? It's different for us. And so, there's arguments about climate change, whether it's mostly anthropogenic, whether it's mostly natural, whether it's some mix of the two. It's probably some mix of the two, right? And so, but it's happening. This is a climate style disruption. It's a disruption to the normal patterns of things for a long period of time. So you have glaciers are a great example. You have these periods of more ice, lower sea levels. When they melt, sea levels come up. You get the idea. Habitat change is another one that is very important. These are large-scale changes that can transform entire ecosystems. The ecosystem in this picture has been transformed. This is anthropogenic, has to do with clear cutting, but it could have to do with a drought, right? It could have to do with some sort of catastrophic flood. It could have to do with a fire. And these elk in this picture would be out of a home, right? And the elk in that forest would be out of a home. So there could be short-term versions of this or more longer-term versions of this as well. One of the ways that species adapt to this is migration. They move. There's patterns in which they move. We talked about birds in a previous video, or maybe it was earlier in this video. I don't remember. My favorite migration pattern is caribou. Caribou live in Alaska and they migrate. They're nonstop migrating. And they're not just chasing the weather around, right? They don't mind cold weather. They don't mind windy, cold, dirty, nasty weather like we all hate. They are moving for a lot of other reasons. They tend to move for food. They're moving to kind of catch the growing season in different areas. They also move for insects. As insects become, mosquitoes are terrible in Alaska, much worse than they are here. And they go to windier, higher elevation areas to escape the insects. It's kind of strange to think that mosquitoes would cause these large animals to move, but they're so dense that the animals actually have to move to a place where the mosquitoes can't live in order to sort of stay away from them. And so caribou are constantly migrating. They have this giant circle around Alaska. I think it's a great illustration of this. Some migrations are really short-term things. Some migrations are more long-term. Some migrations are vast, even spanning generations, like monarch butterflies will start a migration that the people that start it won't, or the butterflies that start it won't finish it. Just phenomenal, right? It's even hard to understand how that works, but these migrations are a normal part of their life cycle in order to sort of mitigate the disruptions that are happening around them. Here's some examples. So this is a great example. This is Mount Pinatubo, 1991. I was a wee middle school lad when this occurred. But this eruption, which put a bunch of stuff into the atmosphere, caused a global temperature change of 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, that may seem insignificant, but lowering the temperature of the whole globe by almost an entire degree Celsius is fairly significant. And it had to do with the amount of aerosols in the air, sulfur and other things that were in the air that lowered the overall temperature of the globe. Pretty incredible thing, right? And this is seemingly random event that we couldn't predict, but it changed the whole globe. Go back into history and look at these random winters and things like this and why they happened. Well, now we know it happened because of 2 or 3 volcanoes happened all at once, and it really changed the weather because of random, right? Seemingly random. Here's some pictures. For some reason, I like this picture. It's kind of strange. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know if this is AI generated, but you got sort of a weird, it looks like there's a baby mammoth underneath the other one, and that one wolf's getting ready to get stepped on. This has an artist's signature on it, so perhaps it's someone did this on purpose and it's supposed to be a little bit abstracted. I'm not saying it's a bad painting, but it is interesting. Why do I have this? Well, I like weird things, but also to talk about Ice Age. Right, the ice ages that occurred were a semi-predictable kind of thing, right? But they reshape continents and they cause mass extinction. So even though these disruptions are wholly natural, right, they still completely shape the flora and fauna on a world scale, and obviously the climate associated with that. So let's look at some practice. This graph shows fluctuating levels of a migratory bird population over 30 years, with sharp declines in years corresponding to major droughts and recovery during wetter years. Which pattern of disruption is most consistent with this data trend? Take a minute, pause the video, see what you got. Now let's look at it. So is this a random? This isn't random, right? This is seemingly predictable. Is it episodic? Perhaps. It does seem to be, you can predict it, right? Meaning you can predict the results of it. You know what's going to happen as a result of those droughts. But does it seem to happen in a normal pattern? Not really, right? There's no real way to predict that, so it's not like a seasonal type of thing. So we're going to go with episodic on this one. A continuous anthropogenic stress, there's no way to know that. You need more information in order to answer that one. So we're going with episodic here. This was 2.5. Hopefully you'll stick around and watch 2.6. It's coming soon.